There was a great piece on LSUsports.net authored by Cody Worsham, Derek Stingley Jr.'s next play. It is also a part of the podcast, Hey Fightin' Podcast. So if you subscribe to that podcast, you should have a new one in your inbox. And this one, all on Derek Stingley Jr. It's a great read at LSUsports.net. Did you learn anything about the second-year cornerback?
Yeah, I mean, the whole story started with the consensus All-American angle. I didn't realize he was the first defensive player to ever be a consensus All-American as a true freshman. I knew he had a special season. I just figured that had happened before. It's only happened 4 times in the history of college football, going back to when they started naming consensus All-Americans in the 70s. So I didn't know that. But I also, talking to Derek, I knew he was a smart football player. I know Derek. I know his dad. You can see it too, right? It's pretty obvious the way that he plays. But he's got a Joe Burrow-like ability to remember plays, and not just what happened on the play and what he did, but what he was thinking and what he should have done, what he would do different. It's almost like he's seen the play hundreds of times, which he probably has one watching film, but you can just tell his brain is constantly thinking about football and little things and getting better. So I learned that, and then I learned that he's not he doesn't talk much. We know that. He's pretty quiet, keeps to himself on the field. He's not a talker, but he's just he's got this humility to him in the sense that you're talking to a guy that could end up being the best defensive back to come through this program, maybe one of the best to ever play the game. And he just sees so many areas that he has to get better. And it's not fake. I mean, you see athletes fake it sometimes. Oh, I'm trying to get better at this, trying to get better at that. It's authentic. He sees stuff that he's got to get better at, and he's determined to get better at it. And it just amazes me because I watch him play, and I think he's the best thing since sliced bread. But he sees a lot of room for improvement. So if he sees it, I'll agree with him because he knows more about it than I do.
He broke up 22 passes last season, which led the Southeastern Conference. He also had 6 interceptions, 2 in the SEC title game. What's he best at, in your opinion?
I think he is best when he has to improvise. I think he's got exceptional technique, obviously. I think physically the skills are obvious. The running and the jumping and the length and the athleticism, all that stuff. But a lot of guys have that. Maybe not to his level, like he has it on a different level, but a lot of guys have that. What they don't have is this instinct that he has, this ability to know when to stick to his technique and when to deviate from it. That's something that veteran corners in the NFL pick up. When they've been playing it for 10, 15 years and, from the college level into the NFL level, and they realize, oh, my technique can get me so far, but sometimes you have to break out of that. He's already figured that out. Think about his Auburn interception. He on the podcast, he broke it down in incredible depth. But if you think back to that interception, he was supposed to be playing one technique and he was playing it, but then he kind of improvised. And what makes that interception special is he turned his head, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, he turns his head around and when the ball is in midair, refines it and picks it off. And there's not a lot of players at the collegiate level that have the confidence to just turn their head. They've got a sight on the ball. Now I'm going to turn my head and get it around the other way because it'll give me a better chance to catch it. But to have the ability to do it. So it's that combination of instinct and ability. But I'd lean to the instinct because it's just unmatched.
Derek Stingley Jr., what's next? A great piece up at LSUsports.net, authored by Cody Worsham. It's titled Derek Stingley Jr.'s Next Play. And as Worsham points out in the write-up, he can be the first unanimous All-American for 3 years since James Laurinaitis completed that task 06 through 08 with Ohio State, or the first in the SEC since Herschel Walker has done it. So some of the names there are just kind of embarrassing to think about. When you think about this 2020 defense, when I look at them as a whole, a lot because of Stingley on one side of the field, I think they can be better. Now that Pelini's in town leading this group, what do you see?
Yeah, I'm excited about this defense, Jordy. I mean, you think about the secondary with Jacoby Stevens back, Kerry Vincent. I posted a stat the other day on Kerry Vincent. I think he was second or third in the country, maybe first in the country. I can't remember. In passer defense from the nickel spot. His NFL passer rating against was first or second in the country. He really came on late in the season. So You think about that. I'm really high on Cordell Flott. I've been high on him for a long time. When I talked to Derek, I was asking him a little bit about Cordell, and he loves his game, and there's some things that Cordell does that Derek's jealous of. I mean, you think about the potential of those two corners. You bring in Elias Ricks. You've got Mo Hampton back at safety. You've got Eric Monroe. I mean, you've got this combination of experience and talent, and secondary's loaded. And so then you think about what Bo Pelini can do with that front seven, and he shifts it around and makes it more of a 4-3. And can you get a little more pressure off the edges? Does that fit what LSU does a little bit better? All I know is what I've talked to people about, and they're all excited about it, and they all have very, very high expectations. So I'm excited to see this defense because, the offense brings back a lot of familiar faces. But they obviously lose a lot of familiar faces, and you're going to want that defense to take the step up and make it easier on the offense as they try to figure some things out as they get a new quarterback and a new running back and a lot of new faces on the offensive line. If that defense can step up and be a difference maker and give that offense time to develop, it could be really special.
Digital media reporter from LSU, Cody Worsham, joining us here on After Further Review. You can hit him on Twitter at Cody Worsham. Make sure and check out the podcast, Hey Fightin' Podcast, which is for LSU football, and, of course, Boot Up, LSU basketball podcast. We're going to talk to Will Wade here at 5 o'clock. I know you cannot talk about recruiting. It looks as if they're going to land another 5-star in Moussa Cisse. But when you just look at the roster next season, let's see that Cisse decides to go somewhere else, and they're just playing with what they got today. What are the expectations for his program going into year 4?
I'm excited. I mean, I think, I talked to Will. Probably time is kind of a flat circle right now with all this stuff we've been dealing with. It was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago for the podcast. And he said, as I'm sure he's told you on your radio show in the morning, that he thinks this could be his best team yet. Yeah. And that's amazing to think about because last year's team was so good, won the SEC and made the Sweet 16 and just kind of ran into a buzzsaw in Michigan State. But you look at the potential names, it could be a really, really, really special roster with Cam Thomas coming in and scoring a bunch as a true freshman. If Javonte comes back, the way that he played in SEC play was really encouraging. You think he's going to get better and be a top 5 point guard nationally. I mean, that could be a special backcourt right there. To me, what makes them special is the depth that they could have. And, if they do add some talent late and they go to, I was listening to his interview with you guys the other day and he was kind of hinting at that the defensive changes they're going to do. And to do that, you got to have the horses. They got the horses. I mean, think about the guys they could bring off the bench. To bring Charles Manning off the bench. And I'm the biggest Charles Manning fan there is, probably outside of that program. I love that guy's game. To me, he's a bona fide starter everywhere in the SEC. But you could bring him off the bench because you've got Javonte Smart and Cam Thomas. And then, you could put Darius Days at the 3, and if Watford comes back and, you add some depth inside. I mean, it could be a special team. It could be a fun team. The biggest thing, obviously, Jordy, is they got to guard and they got to defend better than they did this year. I think everyone over there knows that. We all know it. Offensively, they're going to score 1 million points, and if they're good defensively, they're going to be a very good team. If they're great defensively, which they should have the personnel to have a shot at that, I mean, it could be one of the best teams in the country, which is really exciting.
Cody Worsham talking a little LSU basketball. Will Wade will stop by after further review an hour and 15 minutes from now at straight up 5 p.m. here on ESPN New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Alexandria. Real quick, back to the Stingley piece before we get you out of here, and it's over at LSUsports.net. You can check it out on Twitter. Derek Stingley's next move, next play over at LSUsports.net. Would you keep him back on punt return?
I would. I mean, I think that's an area that he knows he could prove. We saw how electric he could be there, and I think he's got the ability to be great back there. I think that's one area that I think confidence affected him at times last year. I'd love to see him there because, ideally, I think Coach O's talked about this in some different spots. But if they do get the chance to play him on offense as a junior, which we'll see. I mean, I think he's focused on playing defense right now. But if he could get to that stage and then he's playing a little offense, he's playing defense and returning punts, not only can he make a lot of plays for you, but he can make a run at a Heisman potentially, which I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We just got one. I don't want to get greedy and try to get another one here right after it. But, I mean, just he's that type of player. He's that Charles Woodson type of talent that if, get the ball in his hands. I mean, we know what he can do. He's got great ball skills. Get the ball in his hands in whatever way you can. So they got guys back there that can return punts. I'm sure fantastic, but I'd love to see Derek Stingley keep doing it for the next couple of years. It
is a fantastic read at LSUsports.net. You can also give it a listen as a part of the Hey Fightin' podcast, a sit-down with LSU's unanimous All-American and the best freshman in college football, and Derek Stingley Jr. with Cody Worsham, who is here on After Further Review. Give us a little insight into it. Thank you, as always, for your time. Excellent work, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you, Jordy.